today's masterclass, which is called operant conditioning. Now, operant conditioning might seem like a very technical, weird kind of sounding word to you. Operant conditioning. What does operant conditioning mean? This is, and I'm not even kidding you, this is the dark art of video game design. This is literally the stuff that should be illegal, but it's not, right? Now, as players, I'm sure you played games where you've been playing late into the night and maybe it's a level-based game or whatever, and you're sleepy but you're like, no, 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 one more level, let me do a little bit more, let me play one more time, let me play one more round. Have you had that experience playing video games? As a game designer, currency, Mara, what is your pesa? Your pesa is player time and engagement. If a player is playing your game, engaging with your game, that is your bread and butter. You want to extend that time. You want a player to stay in your game as long as possible. Whether it's a paid game or a free-to-play game, you want the player to be engaged and having a long, long, long session. And this is how it is going to be done. Okay. And this has been around for a long time. This is nothing new. It's just that free-to-play games and a lot of other games use it. So operant conditioning, creating rewards that motivate players. Now, there is a particular in which you can motivate players. There is a particular way in which you can bring back players. There is a particular way in which you can engage players, right? Now, this is one of the tricks, but what is one of the most important tricks that games use, especially free-to-play games use this a lot. So what is conditioning? Conditioning is when someone does something. As a game designer, you want your players to do something. You want your players to fight, run, talk to NPCs, do things in your game. You want to make them do things, but obviously you can't force them. You can't take a gun and put it on their head and say, do this or I'll fucking kill you. No, you want them to do it of their own accord, by themselves, willingly. And that is called conditioning. When you condition someone, something called Pavlov's dog. So basically what happened was that this guy, Pavlov, I think he was a psychologist, I don't know what the fuck he was. He had a dog. And so he did an experiment in which he, every day at a certain time, he would ring a bell and then he would give the dog food. And then once again, he would ring the bell and he would give that dog food. So over a period of time, what happened is that that dog associated the ringing of the bell with food. And then one day he just rang the bell randomly, and immediately the dog started salivating because that association was made. The bell was associated with food, right? That's conditioning. Conditioning is when you make someone do something. Now, get into operant conditioning. I want to talk about this guy called B.F. Skinner. Have you ever heard Skinner box? Anybody heard of Skinner box? Oh, you had to read more. Okay. Anyway, so his name was B.F. Skinner. He was an American psychologist, behaviorist, author, inventor, and social philosopher. And he was some Edgar Pierce professor of psychology, Harvard, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Some learned professor kind of American guy in the US. Okay. And he did a very, very interesting experiment. He did experiments on operant conditioning. So what is operant conditioning? Operant conditioning is a learning process through which the strength of a behavior is modified by reinforcement or punishment. Okay. So what is reinforcement? Reinforcement is when, as a parent, I use it all the time. You guys have had it used. So when you do something good comes to you. So for example, you study hard for a test and you get like 90% in that test, right? And what does the teacher do? The teacher rewards you. The teacher claps, makes you stand in front of everyone and says, this guy worked really hard. He got 90%, whatever. And you're happy. So it is a positive reinforcement. Or it could be that the teacher might say, for people who do well in the test, I don't know, get them a chocolate or give them something. So you do something good and something good comes to you. On the other hand, punishment is the opposite. So in school, if you don't do your homework, like in my Hindi class, when I was in school in class 10, I was always standing outside the class permanently because I never used to do my homework. That was just my place. But of course, we are going to be talking mostly only about the positive reinforcement. We're not going to be talking about punishment. Next up, this is the thing. This is a Skinner box. One of the most infamous things that you will ever hear about. And people get like very outraged about it because it's like really like dark psychology and it causes player addiction. But it is the way it is. Like, I'm not going to make a moral judgment about it because it is what it is. There are a lot of worse things that people do. Okay, so what exactly is a Skinner box? So Mr. Skinner did an experiment in which he took a rat and he put the rat inside a box. And then he put a lever. Can you see that there? It's like a wooden plank and it's on hinges and it's got some kind of like mechanism. Now, what was the goal of putting this rat inside? Was he a sadist? I don't know. Maybe he was, but like he didn't want to harm the rat. He just wanted to, what did he want the rat to do? He wanted the rat to press the lever. He wanted the rat to keep pressing the lever. So imagine the rat is a player, or the rat is you as a player. And so, for example, give me an example of a game that you guys play, which you're really addicted to. Something that you keep doing that you want to keep doing again and again and again. Okay. Now, you are the rat. As a designer, wants you to keep playing. Mr. Skinner wants the rat to keep pressing the lever. Now, what he did, let's go to the next slide. Reinforcement is anything that encourages the behavior. Anything that reinforces is a reinforcer. Punishment is anything that discourages the behavior. Anything that punishes is a punisher. Okay. So in this operant conditioning chamber, the subject is a rat. The target behavior. What is the target behavior? Lever pressing. This is what we want the player to do. We want him to press the lever. And what is a reward? We are giving a food pellet. Now, imagine you put a rat inside a box, okay? Inside this operant conditioning chamber. And the rat is like, oh, what am I doing here? Oh, look, a lever. And what would the rat do? The rat, obviously, rats are always hungry. Rats always want to eat. The rat's going to be like, holy, this is crazy. You press a lever and food comes out? Dude, that's crazy. What do you think he's going to do again? Now, the question to be asked here is that what is the goal of this experiment? Target behavior. Do you want him to press it once or do you want him to keep pressing it continuously? Every time if he presses the lever, a food pellet comes out. What is going to happen? Forget the lights. Lights don't exist. Imagine if every time he presses the lever, he gets food. He's going to tire of it because his stomach is going to be full. He's going to be satiated. On the other hand, if after the first time, when he presses the lever, he gets a food pellet. Imagine if so, somewhere between giving the rat a pellet every time he presses it and never giving the rat a pellet when there's some balance in the middle in which we have to find what is the reward of pellets we have to give him that is going to make him keep pressing that lever. Based on this experiment, so Mr. Skinner, what he did was he cracked the code how you can make a rat. So basically, there are 4 basic patterns of reinforcement called reinforcement schedules, right? Now, all of them have different levels of effectiveness. Now, what is a reinforcement schedule? A reinforcement schedule is, think of it as a pellet. Giving the pellet is a reinforcement. What is a schedule? A schedule is like you have your class schedule, which is something which is planned out, something which you know how much you have to do and when, right? That's a schedule. That's something which is planned. Now, let's see the first one. Now, there are basically 2 kinds of reinforcement schedules. One is called interval and one is called ratio. What exactly does interval mean? Interval is basically reinforcement is applied based on time elapsed. Now, this is something like a job, right? You have a job, and if you have a job and if you get a salary, yeah, a lot of you. So your interval ratio is when you get your salary, usually between first and 10th of the month, right? That comes according to time, okay? It means that on this day, every month, my salary is going to come into my account. And that is a ratio, that is an interval-based time, Joshi. That means as long as you keep working, as long as you keep doing whatever you're supposed to do, working Monday to Friday, whatever, beginning of the month, you're going to get your salary. That is a interval-based schedule. And time-based is explaining interval. So interval is a reward which is given to you on the basis of time. You do this much, you get a time, right? And can anyone give me an idea of interval? The next kind of reward is called ratio. This is when reinforcement is applied based on the subject's responses. Okay. Now, say suppose you are a freelancer. You don't have a job. You are a freelancer and your job is, say, making art assets, making 3D art assets, right? So every time you make a 3D asset and you deliver it to your client, the client gives you money, correct? So the client is not giving you money based on time. You can be scratching yourself the whole day for 5 days and not doing any work. The client is not going to pay you. The client is not paying you based on time. The client is paying you based upon an action that you are performing, and that is delivery of the assets. You deliver the asset, you give the car or car model or character model or tree or whatever it is, ting, you get that message. Understood? Give me an example of ratio-based reward in games. Exactly. XP and level up. XP and leveling up does not just happen on the basis of farting around. It happens on the basis of doing something, right? Like in Overwatch or whatever, you keep winning matches, you get more and more points, and you keep leveling up, right? So you keep leveling up, you get a reward of another level, you have a nicer looking badge, right? Your profile looks better, you are at a higher level, other players can see that you're a high level player, and this is a reward that you get because you've done something. Basically, two kinds of rewards are there. One based on interval and one based on ratio. Understood? Any doubts so far? When you complete missions, you have to do something, right? You actually have to complete that particular mission. You have to do something. You have to perform a certain action. And till you perform that certain action, you don't get the reward. Once you perform that action, you get a reward, correct? Yeah. Yes. So that is ratio. That is actually a little bit of a mix of interval and ratio. It's not all black and white. There are a little bit of gray also. But we'll get to that. You can even mix up these things. But right now, let's not get into the complications. The one you mentioned right now is a response based, it's a ratio reward. Understood? So now let's do some variations in this. Now there are two kinds of reinforcement schedules, which is interval and ratio. Now within these two also, within each type of reinforcement, you have two variations. One is fixed and one is variable. Give you an example. So what is a fixed reinforcement occurs when a ratio or interval is satisfied. So for example, fixed means that every single day within 24 hours, if you log in, you're going to get a daily spin or a daily login bonus of coins or whatever. That is fixed interval. Understood? Fixed interval. That means every 24 hours you get a reward. Every 48 hours you get a reward. Every 7 days you get a reward, right? Every month you get a salary, correct? That's fixed. Then there is variable. Variable is when it occurs. This is a little bit complicated. This is where it gets complicated. So some of you guys may get confused. So listen very carefully. Variable is when the reinforcement will occur at an average of the interval or ratio. So you can hard code into the game that what we'll do is we will give a reward to the player for every 24 hours of time that the player spends in the game. But we will not give it at exactly 20 hours. We'll put in a variation in which the average will be 20 hours, but sometimes it can be 16 hours, sometimes it can be 30 hours, sometimes it can be 10 hours, sometimes it can be 5 minutes, sometimes it can be 40 hours. So there'll be a variation in so you will get a reward based on time, but it's not going to be fixed. It's going to be variable. So the game will calculate based on the hours. See, because as a designer, you have to fix something. So you'll fix an average. So basically it becomes unpredictable. Next will be variable ratio. What is variable ratio? Variable ratio is you need to do something in the game, right? You need to keep doing something in the game and you will get a reward based on doing something. But say suppose like in World of Warcraft, you get a gem or whatever whenever you kill boars. So imagine that the designer says, okay, let's make this a variable ratio reward that the player will get something. Let's make it at an average of 20 boars. So which means that you go into the forest and you start killing boars, and technically according to the design, every 20 boars you kill, you'll get a reward. Okay, but it doesn't actually happen every 20 boars. Sometimes you'll kill 10 boars and you'll get a reward. Next time maybe you'll kill 30 boars and you've got no reward. Like, what the fuck, man? I've killed 30 boars and I've got no reward, because then the average has gone to the other side. Next time, exactly after 20 boards, you'll get a reward. You're understanding? So you're doing actions, you're performing actions in the game, and you're getting rewards based on your actions, but it's not fixed. It's variable, right? It makes it unpredictable. You don't know when you're going to get it. So fixed rewards are those rewards which you know reliably you're going to get this reward at this time. Okay, like for example, like XP, right? Now XP, like if I'm playing Overwatch, there's a bar. Every time I finish a match, I can see my bar kind of going up and up and up and up, right? And I can see my bar is going up and the next level is here. Level 15 is here. And I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna keep playing matches today. I'm not going to sleep today before I reach level 15, right? So I'm just going to keep playing matches, even if it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I hit that level 15. I'm like, yes, level 15. I hit level 15 because I'm playing matches, I'm getting points, and I'm going up. So that is a fixed ratio reward. Now imagine that is a fixed interval reward. That's a fixed ratio reward. Now imagine that I'm playing matches randomly and I have like 7 matches to go before I hit that level. And suddenly I get a booster. I get like a random booster and suddenly I finish 7 levels by that random booster that the game has given me. Or I get like a treasure chest, or I get a loot box which gives me a level boost, I'm gonna be like, fuck, dude, that is so cool. Like, instead of playing, so I just got a sudden reward. That is variable. So basically, now there are four kinds of reinforcement schedules. Firstly, you have interval based. What is interval based? Time based reward. What is a ratio reward? You perform some action and get a reward. Understood. So basically, there are four kinds of rewards in games, and also for the rat. Yes, see, this is all coming from the rat. This is all coming from the rat. So there are four: fixed interval, fixed ratio, variable interval, variable ratio. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some graphs which are going to help you to understand the effectiveness of each one of these ratios. Okay. This is now effectiveness in eliciting response rate. What does that mean? Which means that you are a player, or you imagine you're a rat, right? You're pressing the lever. Okay. Now, if the rat is alert and happy and enthusiastic, he's going to be like tuck 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 tuck. If he's like not in a good space, he'll be like tuck tuck. Now look at this graph. On the left side, on the vertical axis, you have cumulative number of responses. Okay. And in the horizontal axis, you have time. Can you see that graph? So what happens is that, now see, the thing in a fixed interval is that, can you see what happens as soon as you get the pellet? What happens as soon as you get the pellet? Or what happens as soon as you get your salary? As soon as the rat gets the pellet, now you'll be like, then he gets tired. Then he starts pressing it slowly, slowly, little bit slowly. Then as the time comes closer, he starts pressing it faster because he's happy. Can you see this up and down seesaw? Because he knows every 10 minutes or every half an hour he's going to get the pellet. So his mental state is going to be different based on the time because he's expecting it. Okay, 12 o'clock, one pellet, 12:30, one pellet. So his mind, his psychology is going to be up and down depending, because he knows when the reward is coming. You can predict it. Next, let's look at variable interval. So can you see those lines? They're all different gaps, right? From the bottom, the first line is a certain amount, the second line is bigger, the third line is even more, then the fourth line is shorter. So basically what is happening is that this is an interval based reward, but the player doesn't know when it's going to come. It can come anytime. The reward can come anytime. So can you see the response rate doesn't change? See, because this is all your human psychology, guys. This is a window into the mind of a living being. Whenever we know, if we don't know that something good is going to come to us, now, if we can't predict it, then we are much more excited permanently, right? So response rate is steady because it can come anytime, right? See, technically, if I get a reward now in a variable response, the next reward could come after 2 minutes also, technically speaking, right? We don't know when it's going to come. Instead of 30 minutes, it can come after 2 minutes also. Okay, it's a different thing that afterward it's going to come at 45 minutes, 50 minutes. You can get it quickly also, right? Next, fixed ratio. Again, the same story, which means that you know that if you do this action this many times, you're going to get a reward. So again, the same thing is there. Every 10 times, every 10, every 30 times the rat presses the lever, a pellet is going to come. So every single time the pellet comes, then the rat's like, then again starts pressing the lever slowly, then again starts pressing the lever fast. Correct? So if you can see all of them, the slope of the lines is more or less equal. More or less equal. So there's not much difference in the general enthusiasm of the rat. But which one is remaining now? Variable ratio. You guys want to see what a variable ratio reward looks like? Can you see how crazy that is? That is variable ratio. That is the magic of variable ratio, because this is why you keep playing matches. Imagine you're playing a game in which you're doing certain actions, and imagine there's a sword, like a very powerful weapon, or a loot box which drops whenever you finish a game. Now, this is where loot boxes come in. So imagine every time you finish a round in a game, you get a loot box. Have you guys played games like that? You're always looking forward to that loot box, because that loot box most of the time has some shitty things in it, right? But once in a while, you know that there could be that amazing skin or that fantastic object which is going to come in that loot box. And it's possible that the next time you play, the next loot box you get could be that reward you want. It could be that sword or that skin or that crazy thing you want, that really rare item you want. It could be that next loot box. And that's why you play. That's a variable ratio. The game makes you keep doing actions, and you don't know which of those actions is going to get you that big reward that you really want. Most games have a mixture of rewards. Now let's do some examples. So you have a character who runs around a virtual world fighting monsters, completing quests. Your character acquires experience points by defeating the monsters and completing these quests. Now, once you've acquired enough experience points, your character levels up, which means they get stronger and may gain access to new abilities. Your character is also rewarded items for defeating these monsters and completing these quests. So what exactly is a level? Leveling up is what? Fixed ratio. You perform certain number of actions and you go to the next level. Fixed ratio. For example, imagine that there's a new sword or something that has been introduced. And this item is going to make you super powerful, going to give you some crazy ability that you want. You could get this really rare weapon at any point, right? That's it. That's the variable ratio reward that everyone is always looking for. This is why you can't put this fucking game down. You can't stop playing this game because you never know what action of yours or at what time you're going to get this thing that you really, really want. Because normally, when do people quit? People quit when they finish a level. Like for me also, when I used to play Overwatch, I used to be like, okay, I'm gonna reach level 43 and then I'm gonna quit. So as soon as you reach level 43, you quit playing the game, you go to sleep. This is like super evil shit, right? Because you're basically like fucking with the players' heads, and you're like, the next time you do this, normally it's a very grindy, boring kind of action. You have to do boring shit for a long. That's the grindiness of the game. The things that you're doing in the game are very boring and tedious things. It's not like super exciting. So you keep grinding. Players keep grinding for a long time to suddenly get this random thing that they want. Yeah, so this is just pretty much the same thing that I just talked about. Next, you have some reinforcement schedule in mobile games, which is like daily reward, which is a fixed interval schedule, and then you have a random loot box, which is a variable interval schedule. You get based on time, but you never know when. So let's go